General Motors has reportedly reached a tentative deal with striking UAW auto workers, according to several reports, potentially meaning the end of a strike that has cost Detroit car makers hundreds of millions per week. Meanwhile, General Motors' driverless taxi service Cruise remains halted this morning after California regulators revoked its license over public safety concerns, prompting a nationwide suspension last week. Since acquiring the company in 2016, GM has lost billions on its driverless division. In the third quarter alone, Cruise cost General Motors more than $700 million, with losses topping nearly $2 billion in 2023 so far. Tech giant Alphabet, another company that's betting big on a driverless future with Waymo. I recently spoke with Waymo's chief product officer about keeping safety at the forefront of Waymo's driverless technology. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Safety is the core of everything we do, and it's been the prime motivator for us ever since we began this, when this felt almost like a dream. And right now the most powerful thing is actually we have published the results from our fully autonomous rides. From the first million, there were no injuries. There are no contacts with any vulnerable road users like pedestrians and cyclists. We have tested 20 million plus miles.
That's how many miles you've run in all the cities combined.
With a test driver, for example, even before we began doing all this, and that's more testing than all other companies combined.
So what does Cruise's setback mean for the future of driverless cars at large? Let's bring in Michael Wagner, the CEO of Edge Case Research, a risk management partner for companies building autonomous tech. We should point out, by the way, that Waymo is still operating. They haven't necessarily had the kind of issues that we have seen from Cruise. But now that Cruise has been halted, at least temporarily, how much of this do you see as a Cruise-specific issue? How much of this do you think can be applied to autonomous technology as a whole?
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to question the status of the autonomy technology itself. But I think if we look across the industry, things are progressing pretty well. I see this as being a symptom of perhaps poor safety culture at Cruise specifically. If we look more broadly throughout the industry, we do see folks producing data, talking about safety in a really meaningful and transparent way. I think that's going to be critical for getting out of this, because we are in a situation in the autonomous vehicle industry where we're kind of at the precipice of potentially something big, or maybe all having problems together.
And Michael, I want to talk about investment here, because there was a report from F Prime Capital that showed that significant decline in what we've been seeing with self-driving technology investments here. I believe they said down nearly 60% compared to the previous year. Is that a result of perhaps some of the shine coming off this rush there was into autonomous driving, or is there something else at play?
Well, certainly, I think it would be hard to argue against a little bit of the valley of disillusionment in Gardner's hype cycle right now. But I do think the other effect that we're seeing here is that the technology is getting ready to deploy. And so if you're looking at investments as a way of bringing in more research and development money to get the tech ready, as opposed to actually operating it commercially, that could be another effect here, because we are seeing the capabilities of these self-driving vehicles really start to get pretty complicated. But again, safety culture and safety processes are key. We have to be open about what's going on when these kinds of accidents do occur, because they will occur.
There is a question to kind of build on Rochelle's question there about how you make this a profitable venture. I mean, when you think about where we were more than 10 years ago, how many companies were invested in autonomous technology, I mean, that pool has really gotten much smaller as companies have sort of cut their losses. At what point, how significant does the scale need to be in order for this technology to be a profitable venture?
Well, it depends on the kind of application that we're talking about of autonomy. If we're looking at the trucking sector, I think many of the folks involved in that work see an immediate business need to start making money with autonomy today. If you're replacing, folks that are spending long days behind the wheel with additional technology that allows them to extend what they're doing or expand what they're doing in terms of hauling freight, I think there's a real business case here today. If we look at other kinds of applications like taxi applications, I think many players in the industry are looking at rolling that out at scale a little bit later. So some R&D is going to be continued to be needed there. But I think, again, we really are at a phase where the technology is getting capable enough to start to do some simple kinds of things like point-to-point freight hauling that are going to start to build profitable companies. I've been involved since the beginning of this whole effort, trying to develop safety standards and safety practices to deal with some of the inherent issues here. And there really has been quite a bit of progress over the past couple of years in getting the technology ready for market.
So then is the next growth catalyst really going to be with fleets and freight versus, say, robo-taxis or sort of widespread consumer adoption of the technology?
Yeah, I think a lot of the big players are going to be looking are talking about that sort of thing, and there are a lot of advantages. The traffic scenarios involved in highway driving tend to be simpler. The complexity of the task tends to be simpler. Obviously, we're talking about bigger vehicles at high speed. So again, safety has to be paramount. But I think we're going to start to see some real commercial progress move forward on the trucking side before the taxi side. So definitely keep your eyes peeled for updates from companies specifically in that sector.
Michael, I will tell you, as somebody who took that ride with Waymo, I mean, I on a personal level, very impressed with how much that technology has advanced, right? It was a pretty smooth ride in really the busiest part of San Francisco. But a lot of this is about autonomous cars coexisting with human drivers. I mean, when you think about the safety aspect, how much of this is also about human drivers learning to share the road with autonomous cars and understanding their habits, just like we understand the habits of other drivers?
I think realistically, there is going to be some human adaptation to the way these self-driving vehicles work. But also the inverse is really important too. And this is one of the big challenges, and it's been the focus of a lot of R&D, is having the autonomy understand what the behaviors of the human-driven vehicles around them, mean and look like. Because there's certainly a lot of context involved in everyday driving that we just kind of understand as humans. And this is especially the case when we're talking about busy neighborhoods in San Francisco or in other cities where there's a lot going on. And so I think that is really one of the big challenges that the technology is just, again, starting to be able to handle is not really what you're saying about us adapting to the robots, but really the robots learning how to operate safely alongside us.
Indeed, certainly some ethical decisions that people make when they're driving. Be interesting to see how that would translate for autonomous technology. Appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning. Michael Wagner, Edge Case Research CEO. Thank you so much.
Thank you.